He handed me divorce papers minutes before our daughter walked across the graduation stage. No warning, no remorse. Behind him, his boss clutched an open envelope, his jaw clenched in silence. Mark turned pale before I said a single word. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The sun was warm against my back, the kind of warmth that usually brings comfort, the illusion of peace. Emily was laughing with her friends in a cluster of blue gowns, her mortarboard sitting crookedly on her head, a small strand of hair caught in the wind. Her laughter rang out like a bell, pure, unspoiled, untouched by the storm that was seconds from shattering the thin glass of that morning. Mark's hand brushed my elbow, a practiced gesture that once meant affection, but now landed with all the tenderness of a blade. "Can we talk for a second?" he said, his voice smooth, casual. Too casual. I followed him behind the auditorium, away from the ceremony, the balloons, the proud grandparents, the staged happiness. He didn't meet my eyes, just reached into his blazer and pulled out a manila envelope. It was creased at the corners, a fingerprint smudge near the flap. The kind of envelope you use to send bad news with formality. Cold, sealed, final. "It's time," he said simply, like he was announcing a haircut appointment or a change in dinner plans. "I'm filing for divorce." I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why, because I already knew. But that didn't soften the impact. Even when you see the wave coming, it can still knock the breath out of you. "Today?" I asked, because it was the only word my throat could shape without cracking open. He shrugged like it meant nothing. "I wanted to wait until after the ceremony, but you deserve to know. I'm done pretending." Pretending. That word hung in the air like smoke. Pretending through our daughter's childhood. Pretending through family dinners, anniversaries, vacations. Pretending through each carefully framed photograph where we looked like a couple who made it, who lasted. I stared at him, at the man I had once trusted with my softest years. 23 years beside him, watching him brush his teeth, fold laundry, get frustrated with slow Wi-Fi. 23 years of building a life, piece by piece, brick by emotional brick. And now he stood in front of me like a stranger wearing Mark's face. There was no apology in his eyes, no shame, just relief. Like a man who had finally dropped the weight he'd been carrying and didn't care what it crushed on the way down. And yet, I didn't scream. I didn't slap him. I didn't crumble. Because what he didn't know, what he would never have guessed in that smug moment of his quiet betrayal, was that I had been waiting too. Just not for this. The unraveling didn't come in a single moment. It arrived like a slow leak, barely audible, barely visible, but deadly all the same. Mark's betrayal wasn't cinematic. It was methodical. A gradual erosion of routines, of glances, of warmth. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work had been rough, or so he said. I didn't question the late meetings, the missed calls, the way his phone always seemed to be face down. But suspicion isn't a flood. It's a drip. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. He started taking business trips to Cincinnati. Always Cincinnati. Once every 2 weeks like clockwork. Always the same hotel, the same dull itinerary. I asked why the same place. He said consistency saved the company money. I nodded, but I noticed he started using cologne again. The expensive one I'd bought him 5 birthdays ago, the one he claimed gave him headaches. I noticed his suitcase smelled like fresh soap when he came home, not airport grime. And when I kissed him once, just out of habit, I caught the faintest trace of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirt collar. Then came the password change. His iCloud, once openly shared, was suddenly locked for security reasons. His bank card, the one linked to our joint account, declined while I was at the grocery store. But when I checked the balance, it had dropped by several thousand. He told me I must have misread the numbers. I didn't argue. I watched. I listened. 2 months before the graduation, I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell anyone, not even my sister, who would have cried with rage on my behalf. What he uncovered was beyond betrayal. It was premeditation. Mark wasn't just cheating. He was staging a quiet coup. He had opened a separate bank account in a different state under a P.O. box. He drained our savings in small, calculated withdrawals disguised as business expenses. And worse, he'd drafted a backdated separation agreement with a lawyer he'd known from college. An old friend I'd once welcomed into our home for Thanksgiving dinner. The document was a knife carved with legal language. Its aim, to leave me with nothing. But I wasn't idle. I collected everything. I built my own case, screenshots, bank statements, GPS pings, and hotel receipts. That pen camera he gave me, the one he joked about, saying I should use it if I ever wanted to write spy novels. It recorded him whispering sweet nothings to someone named Jillian. So when he handed me that envelope at Emily's graduation, I didn't flinch. He thought my silence was surrender. But silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's preparation. The crowd thinned as the last names were called and tassels were flipped from one side to the other. The air buzzed with the sweet tension of finality. Parents crying behind sunglasses, students breaking into laughter, caps flying skyward like confetti. I watched Emily wrap her arms around her friends, beaming, her diploma clutched to her chest. My heart clenched, not with sorrow, but with a resolve that had solidified in silence over the past 2 months. I spotted Mark near the refreshment tent, adjusting his cufflinks like a man who believed the show was still his to control. The arrogance in his posture hadn't changed. He hadn't noticed the shift. He thought the stage belonged to him, that he'd stolen the scene with his little ambush. But he'd read the script wrong. I approached with deliberate steps, clutching the white envelope like it was nothing at all. A piece of paper, a formality. But inside, it was a blade carved from truth. He turned to me with the smug grin of someone who thinks they've already won. "Retaliation papers already? That was fast," he said, his voice dipped in sarcasm, amused by the thought that I'd scramble in desperation. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I held his gaze until his amusement dimmed under the weight of my stillness. "No," I said, letting each word settle like a slow drop of oil on water. "These are copies of your financial statements, hotel invoices, and emails with your lawyer, forwarded to your company's ethics committee. Also a copy for the college fund lawyer, just so there's no confusion about who tried to siphon what." His face paled slightly, the grin faltering at the edges. He tried to hide it, but the skin near his temple twitched. His hand moved to take the envelope, but I didn't let go just yet. "Oh," I added, casually nodding behind him. "And one more thing." He turned. Robert Langston, CEO of Mark's firm, stood 10 feet away in a tailored navy suit, the open envelope in his hand a mirror to the one I was holding. His face, stern, unreadable, was that of a man who had just seen a hurricane forming where he'd expected a breeze. "We'll be speaking first thing Monday," Robert said, his voice crisp and cold. "Privately." Mark turned back to me. The blood had drained from his face, not from embarrassment, but from the cold realization that the world he'd so carefully curated was about to implode under the weight of his own deceit. He leaned in, hissing through clenched teeth. "You've ruined me." I stepped back, met his gaze one last time, and let the smile rise, feral, earned, unshaken. "No," I said, my voice a whisper lined with steel. "You did that yourself." The aftermath didn't erupt. It unfolded, precise and deliberate, like a well-scored symphony of consequence. Mark's fall wasn't loud or theatrical. It was quiet, procedural, and devastating in its finality. His firm conducted a formal review, triggered the moment Robert Langston returned from the graduation ceremony with a file he hadn't expected to open that day. I never stepped foot into the corporate tower Mark once swaggered through, but I heard from mutual contacts, those who knew how to whisper, that his name disappeared from the directory overnight. Breach of ethics, concealment of funds, conflict of interest. Words that once belonged to legal thrillers now sat beside his name in black and white. I didn't dance on the ruins. I didn't need to. Truth had done the work for me. Emily came into the kitchen one morning, her phone in hand, eyes searching. "Why is Dad's name trending in my feed?" she asked, her voice careful, not angry, not naive, just curious. I set down my coffee, met her gaze, and chose the clearest truth I could offer her. "Your father made a choice," I said. "So did I." There was a pause, longer than I expected. She nodded, walked across the kitchen floor, and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm proud of you," she whispered into my neck, the tremble in her voice making space for something stronger than anger, understanding. The divorce moved faster than anyone anticipated. With the weight of evidence behind me, emails, account statements, the predated agreement, there was no room for his negotiation, no platform for denial. The court awarded me the house, full alimony, all legal fees. The judge, a woman with a sharp jaw and tired eyes, barely concealed her contempt for Mark's oversights. He moved into a cramped condo with his Cincinnati companion. I didn't ask questions, but the silence spoke. 3 months later, someone mentioned she'd left, said something about unrealized expectations. I smiled politely and let the topic drift. As for me, I finally stopped waiting for permission to start. I enrolled in a master's program in art therapy, something I'd shelved year after year under the weight of practical life. I spent nights painting, filling canvases with stormy grays and deep ocean blues. My hands, once clenched in tension, learned to move freely again. Slowly, the palette shifted. Warmer hues crept in. Sunlight broke through the brush strokes. Sometimes I drive by that auditorium. The banners are long gone, the seats empty, the stage quiet. But I remember it well. Justice didn't arrive in fireworks or courtroom drama. It came folded in an envelope, steady as breath, quiet as steel.